So, if you are like me, you have a hard time deciding where to go. It's an embarrassment of riches, all of these amazing storytellers. But thankfully, it's a long weekend, and there's lots of chances to see who you want to see. So I know later on today, Bill Epp is going on at 4 o'clock. I love Bill Epp, one of my favorite people, favorite tellers, and also a good friend. And I can't wait to go to his tent later on to tell him that all of you chose me over his set right now. And another thing I love about this festival are these two people right here. It's hard for me not to watch them while I'm telling stories. Carol Birch, you may not remember this. Years ago, she saw me at the Exchange Place, which is absolutely a spot I'm going to be at tonight between 5:30 and 7 to hear those amazing tellers. And she said, I would love for you to come and tell stories at my library in Connecticut. And I said, wow, that's an out of town, I would love that, Carol. She said, it's a 90-minute set. You do 60 minutes, we have a little intermission, you do 30 minutes. And I said, well, I only have about 40 minutes of material. She said, you'll be fine. You have 2 months to figure it out. Carol, thank you for lighting a light that allowed me to come up with 90 minutes to get my first out-of-town gig. One last storyteller I need to mention is Kathryn Tucker Windham. I saw her many times as a spectator, and then I started seeing her as a fellow performer on the stage, and it always was phenomenal. And that your story, Mo, about that, the heartbeat of Kathryn, hearing Mrs. Tucker Windham tell stories was intimidating and amazing. And one day, as we were preparing for the National Festival, she said, I can tell you're nervous, Antonio, in that beautiful southern voice of hers that I can't do very well. And I said, I am, Kathryn, but I'm excited. And she says, I'm going to tell you what. She reached into her pocket, and she took out this little brown nut. She said, this is a buckeye nut from my tree in Alabama. She gave it to me. She said, if you take it and you rub it on your nose, it'll know that it's you. So I took that buckeye nut from Miss Kathryn Tucker Windham's house in Selma, Alabama. I rubbed it on my nose. She said, you gotta rub more. I rubbed it some more. She said, I think you need to do a bit more. So there I am, rubbing my nose. And she starts laughing. I said, will this bring me luck at the festival? She says, oh no, you need good stories at the festival. But it sure was funny watching you rub your nose with that. I carry that buckeye nut with me, and I remember her, and I feel like she's still here, and I miss her very much. So I get to talk with my dad on the phone almost every single day. My dad is from Havana, Cuba, and he's only 88 years old. He loves the American football. He loves the Super Bowls, and now that I'm talking to him, he says, Mijo, I think I've got about 9 or 10 more Super Bowls to watch, okay? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You're going to live forever? He said, Mijo, we don't live forever. You know, my plane is coming down for a landing, you know? Your children, their planes are just taking off. Yours is kind of like circling the airport, okay? And when we talk, we only have 2 or 3 minutes. My dad has nowhere to go. He is long retired, but he has a routine. And part of his routine is talking to my brother at 7 o'clock in the morning when my brother Enrique is going to work, talking to my other brother at 7:30 when he's going to work, and talking to me at 10 o'clock in the morning because it's LA time. I'm three hours behind him. And after he talks with me, I don't know what he does, but he has to get off the phone. And over the years, I listen to him with a little notebook because every now and then I catch a glimpse of something. So when he first made that airplane coming down for a landing joke, the next day I said, where do you come up with these things? He said, ay, mijito, tu abuela, mi mamá, your grandmother, my mother would say these things. And she would say her plane was coming down for a landing. And so I wrote that down, quotes from my grandmother, from my dad's memory, because I'm a writer. My mom gave me a journal when I was 7 years old, and I would just write down small moments. And so some of these small moments were in my journal from my dad, memories of his mom. And every now and then, if you heard me earlier, my dad loves to talk about sports. So in our 2-minute call, if there was a big baseball game last night or a football game, we're just talking about the football game. He loves to talk about the weather, so we talk about the weather. He loves to talk about if he wins the lotto, what he would do with that money. And on one of our conversations, I told my dad that I don't believe in the lottery. And he says, if I win, I'm not giving you anything. And I said, and so we talk about that. But every now and then he'll say, ay, mijito, eso me da un recuerdo. Como dijo tu abuela, no hay mal que por bien no venga. My dad will say, that reminds me of something your grandmother used to say, there's nothing bad that something good doesn't come from it. And I'd heard that before, and I knew that to be a dicho. The word dicho in Spanish means saying, but if you're a Spanish speaker, you hear more. You hear that it's wisdom, or it's humor, or maybe it's from the Bible, or maybe it's from the place where you grew up. In Cuba, they have camarón que se duerme se lo lleva al corriente. If the shrimp sleeps all day, the shrimp is carried away. Cuba is an island, and so there's a lot of these dichos from the sea. In Mexico, my friend said, no, es el camarón que se duerme se lo amanezca en un shrimp cocktail. And you can tell a slight difference between the cultures. In Mexico, they say the shrimp that sleeps wakes up in a shrimp cocktail, and shrimps are so delicious. So over the years, I've been collecting these dichos from my dad, these sayings. And a few months ago, I said, Dad, you know 197 dichos. He said, mijito, es imposible. I said, no, Dad, I have the written record. Over the last 10 years, and every 2 or 3 months, I get another one, and I write them down, and I write them down. And I said, how many more do you know? He says, ay, mijito, abuela conoció como 3,000. I think your grandmother knew 3,000 dichos. He says, I probably know about 300. And I said, and I only have 189 written down. So the problem is they only come up in the right context. And so as they've been coming up, and you never know what the right context is, what it is. We were talking about baseball, and he said, ay, mijito, como dijo tu abuela, la pelota es redonda, pero viene en una caja cuadrada. Like your grandmother used to say, a baseball is round, but it comes in a square box. I'm like, Dad, what does that mean? He said, I don't know, but your grandmother used to say it, okay? So I wrote that one down. Will it end up in a story of mine? I don't know. But after a while, and it's so amazing, Mo, that we're paired, because I love the Jack stories. You all probably heard Jack stories here at the festival. And one of the very first stories I ever heard was Jim May telling the story of Lazy Jack. And Jack goes to work, and he messes it up, and he goes home, and his mama helps him, and he goes back to work, and he messes it up. And so this folktale culture, this structure, this circular structure was interesting to me. And I began to collect these dichos, and that was interesting to me. And then I had one last little memory. When I teach writing to the kids in the elementary schools and middle schools I work with in Los Angeles, I say, to be a writer, you just need to know somebody. How many of you know somebody? How many of you know 2 bodies? How many of you know more than 2 bodies? And the 5-year-olds, it's so funny because they're like, I know 5 people, mister. They call me Mr. I know 5 people, Mr. And then they look around the classroom. I know all these people, Mr. I'm on a soccer team, and I go to church, and I know so many people. And I like, just write down those names. I don't know how to write yet. It's okay. Draw the pictures. And they're drawing the pictures. If you know people, you're a writer. And I say, to be a writer, you also have to have been someplace. How many of you have been someplace? Kids are like, I've been someplace. Where have you been? And they start listing the places. And I said, if you have people and places, you're a storyteller, you're a writer. Now, the only thing is you need to get those people in trouble. A writer teacher said, you get the monkey up into the tree, you throw rocks at the monkey, and you get the monkey down. So throwing rocks at the monkey is the conflict. What is the conflict in these stories? Think of those people you know. Think of those places. And what is the thing that gets them going? And so in some ways, there's no end to the stories we can tell, that we can write. And so piecing together from these 2-minute conversations, hearing a dicho every now and then from my dad, thinking about my abuela, thinking about that place, her little house in Little Havana in Miami, 11512 Southwest 7th Street, not too far from the Tamiami Trail, that little river right across the street from FIU, 20 minutes from the airport, walking into my abuela's house, and the sound of the pressure cooker. How many of you know what a pressure cooker is? So funny, I'm not that old, but I guess I am because kids don't know what it is. Is it like a microwave? No, it's not like a microwave. It's the opposite. It's got a little black hat on it, and you sort of squeeze the thing together, and the steam comes out in a little rhythm, a little thump, thump, and the rhythm for me is the sound of the pressure cooker and the smell of the beans and the garlic, and abuela bringing that food down, where if you ever get the privilege to eat with Cuban people, you prove that you like the food by eating everything on the plate and asking for a complete second helping and clearing that second helping. And the helpings from my abuela were massive cucharones, these great big spoon full of rice and beans and meat and plantains and salad. And afterwards you're so full. Abuela, that was so delicious. Did you like it? I loved it. Do you want another plate? Oh no, I'm too full. Then you didn't like my food. No, I loved it. Then have another plate. I'm too full. Then you didn't like my food, and you had to sit there for as long as it took to eat the whole second plate. The magic about my abuela's house, though, is she had fruit trees in her backyard. How many of you have picked a piece of fruit from a tree and eaten it? How many of you grow food in your gardens? Growing up in Delaware, we didn't really have those kinds of fruit trees. There were apple and pear trees nearby, but there was not tropical fruit. My grandmother had mango tree and an avocado and grapefruit and lemon and lime. And we would go out to the backyard and pick that fruit warm from the sun, have it on the table. So now we're eating abuela's cooked food. We're eating abuela's fresh fruit. We're eating 2 full plates of it. If you were really hungry, which I did one time, I decided to just not eat for the whole day before I was going down to see my abuela. I ended up out of the plane just famished. And I scarfed down 1 plate, scarfed down a 3rd plate, and I ate a 2nd plate, and I ate a 3rd plate. And my abuela got on the phone and she dialed it. Do you all remember dialing phones? She's dialing. She says, Oye, Nico. Nico's what she called my dad. Nico, hay que mandar dinero a papito porque él tiene mucha hambre allí en la universidad. She said, you better send your son more money because he's going hungry up there at the university. So here's the story. I once picked a mango from my grandmother's tree. I ate it. The end. But it tells you a little bit, so I stretched it out, and I did what Mo did. I thought about an old story, and I put it together, and I went through my notebooks, and I collected dichos, and I put together this story. Francisco woke up on his saint day. Los cubanos sí celebramos nuestros cumpleaños. Cubans celebrate our birthdays, but even more important is our saint days. I am named after San Antonio, Saint Antonio. On June 13th, my Cuban family has a big celebration for me, bigger than my birthday. Francisco celebrated the Dia de San Francisco, the date of San Francisco, and his dad said, Francisco, ¿qué tú quieres comer? Papá, I want arroz y frijoles. Of course, we always have rice and beans. Ropa vieja. Oh, your mother makes the best ropa vieja. Plátanos. Of course, plátanos. What do you want for dessert? Oh, Papa, a mango from the mango tree. Papa said, Francisco, you are old enough and big enough and strong enough to pick the mango all by yourself. All by myself? All by yourself. Do you remember where the mango tree is? Sure, Papa. I walk out of our house, I pass my uncle's house. I love my uncle. Your uncle loves you too, Francisco. Then I walk past my abuela's house. I love my abuela. Your abuela loves you too, Francisco. Then I walk past my tia's house, my auntie's house. I like my auntie. You don't love your... Well, Papa, sometimes she's nice and she's like, Oye, Francisco, tesoro de mi vida. And sometimes she's like, Francisco, what are you doing? I never know who I'm going to get. And Papa laughed. My sister's like that. Don't worry. And just past Tia's house is the mango tree. Francisco passed his uncle. His uncle was on the front porch playing dominoes. Who's ever played dominoes? That's a Cuban... Cubans didn't invent dominoes, but we perfected that game. So Tito's there, he's playing dominoes with his friends. Tito, I'm going to get a mango. Feliz Dia de San Francisco. Thanks, Tio. He walked past Abuela. She was on her porch rocking back and forth. Abuela, es mi día de santo. ¿Verdad que sí? Voy a agarrar un mango. Solito, mijito. Solito, abuela. Muy bien, estás creciendo. Adiós, abuela. He passed Tia. There she was, sweeping the front step. y ella tenía una cara de muy pocas amigas. That doesn't translate very well. She had a face that looked like it had no friends at all in the world. Sounds better in Spanish. She's sweeping and sweeping. He says, Tia, I'm going to get a mango. And she is, it's my saint day. Bye, Tia. He got to the mango tree. He climbed it. He finally got to a branch, and he was just about to pick a mango when he heard the sound of a bee. He wasn't scared of one bee, but then there was 2 and 3 and 4 and bees everywhere. And he got scared. He flew down the tree, ran all the way past his family, and got back to his house. His mama and papa said, did you find the mango tree? I did. And were there mangoes in the tree? There were 100 mangoes, papa. And how many did you get? Ni uno, papa. Not even one. Papa said, ay, mijito, mejor pájaro en mano que 100 volando. In English, it's better a bird in the hand than 100 in the tree, because it rhymes in Spanish that way. In English, we say it's better a bird in the hand than 2 in the bush. Mejor pájaro en mano que 100 volando. It's better a bird in the hand than 100 flying in the tree. Mejor un mango en la mano que 100 en el árbol. It's better a mango in the hand than 100 in the tree. What happened? Papa, there were 1,000 bees. 1,000 bees? Okay, maybe 100 bees. 100 bees. La verdad por duro que sepa. Tell me the truth, even if it's hard. My dad heard that dicho from my grandmother all the time. And Francisco said, Papa, there was about 10 or 15 bees, but I was scared. Ay, mijito, no hay mal que por bien no venga. There's nothing bad that something good doesn't happen. A bee can sting you, and that's bad. Pero sin las abejas no tenemos flores ni fruta. Without bees, there's no fruit, there's no flowers. He said, take my hat and gently shoo those bees away and bring us back some mangoes. Francisco took his papa's hat. He walked past his uncle, slamming those dominoes down. He said, el 5 conmigo, el 5 comer no se puede vivir. You're going to play a 5 with me. Without the 5, I'm going to win this game. Tito, my dad helped me. He said, muy bien, mijito. Estoy jugando dominos aquí. No me preocupes. He walked past his abuela. Abuela, my dad helped me figure it out. She said, ay, mijito, dime con quién andas y te diría quién eres. Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. My dad's my friend, and he's super smart. And you're super smart, too. Gracias, abuela. He walked past his tia, and there she was, sweeping that same step. Tia, I'm going to get the mangoes. Adios, tia. He got to the tree. He climbed that tree, and there were the mangoes, and there were the bees. And he gently shooed those bees away, and they flew to other parts of the tree, and he picked his very own special Saint Day mango right into the hat. Wait, I should get one for my dad, and my mom, and my uncle, and my abuela, and my tia. Yeah, I should get one for my tia. I'm going to get one for her some other time. How many think he should get one for his tia? In Los Angeles, they're like, nothing for the auntie. We got some mean kids in LA. Well, he got the mango, put it in his hat, but now he had a problem. He needed to hold onto the hat with both hands. He was too high to jump, and if he threw the mangoes down, they'd get smushed. So what he did is he took the hat, and he very carefully balanced it on his chest, and he reached around the trunk of the tree, and he held on just tightly enough so he wouldn't fall off of the tree, but not so tightly that he'd squish the mangoes. And very carefully, he started to scooch down the tree. Scooch, scooch, scooch. He was halfway down the tree. Scooch, scooch. He was 3/4 of the way down the tree. Scooch, scooch. He was 7/8 of the way down the tree. It's how I teach fractions when I go tell stories at schools. And finally, he was just about the bottom when he held on too tightly, and one of the mangoes got smushed. Sorry, Auntie. Scoops. Sorry, Abuela. Sorry, Abuela and Tío. And finally, when he got down, he remembered something that his grandmother said. El que mucho abarca, poco aprieta. If you try to grab too much, you end up with nothing. So he went up the tree and got one mango, put it into his hat, put the hat on his head, and down he went. And he went up and down until soon he had a hat full of mangoes. When he walked past his auntie's house, he thought maybe a mango would help her feel better, but then he got scared. She's going to be mean. I don't know. He walked up that long sidewalk and she looked meaner and meaner until finally by the time he got there, he held the hat out. He said, Abuela, tia, ¿quieres un mango? And he closed his eyes and waited for her to make that grumbly sound, but she didn't. And when he opened his eyes, he saw that she was taking a mango out. And she said, lo que pasó es yo tenía hambre. Y cuando hambre llama a la puerta, amor sale por la ventana. She said, what happened earlier is I was hungry. And when hunger knocks on somebody's front door, love goes flying out of the back door. She said, that's why I was a little bit crabby. He said, tia, you were a lot crabby. She said, don't push your luck. Okay, tia. And she almost smiled. He gave a mango to his abuela, and his abuela said, pan para hoy, hambre para mañana. If you give away all of your bread today, you're going to be hungry tomorrow. He said, what do you mean, abuela? It's a mango, and there's a tree right there. Just take the mango, abuela. You're so sweet to share. He went to his uncle's house, and his uncle said, agarraste los mangos. Mira que yo puedo hacer con los mangos. He took a mango, and he started to carve it. And he peeled and carved and cut and peeled. And if you used your imagination, it looked like he created an animal, a little tiger. Oh, and there it was. You could almost imagine the stripes. Wow, Tio. Tio said, I can do another animal. And he carved and cut and peeled, and there was a gorilla, and he carved and cut, and there was a bull with charging horns. Wow, Tio, how'd you learn that? Practice, mijito. When he got home, his dad said, did you get the mangoes? And Francisco held out the hat, and it was empty. He said, Papa, I gave them all away. He said, ay, mijito, de vez en cuando es mejor dar que recibir. Sometimes it's better to give than receive. We have that dicho in English as well and in many other languages. He said, let's eat your Saint Day meal and we'll all get mangoes later on. Well, just then in came the family with all of their mangoes and Tia with a basket full of mangoes and a real smile. She said, Francisco, feliz día de tu santo, amor con amor se paga. She said, happy Saint Day, Francisco. Here, these mangoes are for you. Love is repaid with love. And Francisco took those mangoes and he said, thank you, Tia. There's one thing I'd like to say to you. She said, what is that, honey? He said, yeah. She laughed and she said, barriga llena, corazón contento. With a full stomach, there's a happy heart. And that's the story, a mango in the hand. So, if you are lucky enough to talk with your children, your grandchildren, and you have these old sayings, you never know what someone's going to do as they get older. So, and you never know what that's going to spark. Listening to these stories, listening to Mo talk about dancing, it sparked a story for me. How many of you have been bullied or have been the bully? I was talking to my brother about a kid with bullying my son when he was younger, and my brother said, you know, you just got to toughen up. We have all been bullied, and we've all been the bully. Jeff Nelson, senior year of high school, used to open up the trunk of his car and blast his stereo from the speakers that were worth more than a car. And after school, by himself, he would dance behind his car. And we all walked down and we all said, freak, dancing by yourself to music nobody even knows where it comes from, and you can't even dance anyway. And Jeff just dancing to Husker Du and The Cure and a dumb band that nobody heard of called U2 said, why don't you dance? And we just called him freak day after day. And coming down out of that school one day, I thought, why don't I dance? Why don't I dance? And I took off my jacket and I stood behind his car and he blared that music even louder and I danced. And sometimes I think we're all just a couple of dancing freaks like Jeff Nelson. Thank you all very much.